We were only about a mile away from the battleship row. And from our porch, we had a panoramic view of Pearl Harbor, with Ford Island being the focal point of that view. So we could see Battleship Row. We could see all the ships that were anchored within the harbor. And that was the sight that we had. You know, probably the first thing you have to, I guess I have to give you some background. And that as a kid, since I lived right close to the shore of Pearl Harbor, there was a pier that extended into the harbor. Pier must have been less than a foot, maybe half a football field. And this is where the Navy used to land their sailors when they went on shore leaves. And when the fleet went out at sea, some of the high-ranking officers' gig came in and moored at this little pier, so that they didn't have to go out to sea with the rest of the crew. So I used to hang around there, pester them, selling them chewing gum, newspapers, shine their shoe. Sometimes they would ask us to scrub their whites, so we did that. And 25 cents was, to me, a huge amount of money at that time. So this is what I did. And when the sailors came to port and they came ashore, naturally we sold chewing gum, newspaper, shine their shoes, and did that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so in the meantime, as we did that, I had a habit of collecting match covers of all the ships from which the sailor came from. And I had a large collection of that. And it's a shame that after the attack, for fear, I had to destroy those. If I stubbornly kept it today, that would have been a gold mine, but that's in the past. Yeah, there were two servicemen that I remember very well. There's a young, I think it was 18 or 19-year-old blonde, had a V-shaped chest, and his habit was to pull weights and what have you. And he used to show us his physique and what have you. And he was a real nice guy. The other guy was a photographer from the USS Lexington that came down and hung around. He was like a Pied Piper. We used to just hang around with him, and he used to take pictures and show us how to use the camera. So that he's the only guy I really remembered. His name was Odenwaller. And he said he came from Illinois, and that's the only thing I can remember. He was an aerial photographer from the USS Lexington. Earlier, the United States fleet in 1940 used to come into Pearl Harbor after their weekly maneuver. So on Friday afternoon, the ships would come into the harbor, starting with the destroyers that came in, followed by the cruisers, followed by some cargo ships, followed by the battleships, followed by the aircraft carrier. So as they came into the harbor, they moored in their respective positions. The battleship moored on the side of the Ford Island, and the aircraft carriers usually stayed at the end of the Ford Island. So every weekend, as a young kid, I found that fascinating, so I stood on the porch and watched them parade in. Then on Sunday morning, the Air Force, Army Air Force, came by early morning, Sunday morning, come in groups of planes and came dive bombing, without dropping anything, of course, just buzzing the ships. I guess that went for about a half hour, and they went home. So this was the thing that I was conditioned to every Sunday morning. So when I heard the airplane, ran to the porch, watched this little show. Then December 7th, we heard the airplanes, plus the airplanes, we heard explosions. So not only myself running out of the porch, but my brothers and sister and my father, because of the explosion, ran out to the porch to watch what was happening. And here we saw a flock of planes zooming down on the battleships, dropping their bombs, explosion going on, battleship catching fire with plumes of black smoke ascending toward the sky, and seaplane flying all over the place. And I looked at that and I said, wow, the Army is really mad at the Navy. They're dropping real bombs. They're killing their own men. Keep in mind, that's a mentality of a 13 and a half, right? So as the plane zoomed over, I saw the big little red meatball. I said, oh, it's a Japanese plane. So the Japanese are attacking Pearl Harbor. And somehow we all stood dazed and watched the whole show without being afraid or anything. Everybody stood there, struck awe, like, what's happening? Planes zooming all over the planes. You can see them dive bombing, you can see them dropping the bombs, you can hear the explosion, see the fire, and even after the plane finished, some of the magazines evidently caught fire, so there's still explosion going on its own. So after about 30 minutes, the plane disappeared and you see this smoldering column of smoke billowing into the skies, and it became all of a sudden quiet, except explosion here and there because of the effect of the fires. Then a second rural plane came by. Oh, before that, when the attack first started on the right side of Fort Island, I could see the USS Utah, which is a training battleship of World War I vintage, where the conning tower started to go, beginning in capsizing. So all of a sudden that disappeared. No sooner that happened on this side, I see the USS Oklahoma doing the same thing. Evidently was hit by torpedoes, so it's listing and capsize. No sooner that happened, all of a sudden I hear see the USS Arizona explode in such a tremendous sound where it goes, "Ka-pow!" Then no sooner that happened, the shock wave hit your body so that you were taken aback a few inches of the line and see this whole inferno going up. And as a kid, or even my brothers and sisters probably look at it and say, wow, that's the only thing I can think of. And that subsided. The second raid came by, but this time the Navy evidently armed themselves so that when the plane came, they started shooting anti-aircraft fires, so that the sky was pocked with shells. There, I began to see plane get hit, explode right in the air, hit, and they can't control it, so they plunge into the harbor. So there may be 4 or 5 of those that I saw, and they keep strafing and bombing facilities around the island. And that went on for another 30 minutes. Then all of a sudden it became quiet. Before it became quiet, there was another big explosion in the back of the harbor. And the explosion, to me, was not as loud as the Arizona, but was spectacular in that the thing just burst all over the sky. You can hear this big sound, but not like the Arizona where it went kapow. And we didn't feel any shock wave from that explosion. But the explosion itself was really spectacular. If you went to a fireworks and accidentally the pile of fireworks all of a sudden explodes on its own, probably something would be like that. Then afterwards, all became quiet, and we just stood around wondering if there was going to be a third attack, which never occurred. By afternoon, we're sitting 56 feet above, and there's a highway run below, and then went into our town. And there's a section of our town that was designated as a temporary burial site for the casualties. So we could see truckloads of wooden coffin with blood stain on it passing by, knowing that these are the casualties that they recovered and taken to the cemetery over there. By that evening, they declared martial law, stating that there should be no lights at night. So we adhered to all that. And the second day, a sailor from the USS Arizona came to our house, and when talking to him, he said he was one of those lucky ones that went on deck. So when the ship exploded, he got thrown out in the water, and he survived that. The Marine that came also was on the Oklahoma. As it was capsized, he jumped off the ship and survived. So these are two people that came to my house for the simple reason to secure a radio set. My second brother was a long-time ham operator. He spent about $1,000 setting up that. So he used to communicate worldwide by sending postcard, like making a date. And on that particular time, like if you communicate with Europe or Japan, you probably have to get up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning to be there daylight time, what have you. So that's what he used to do. My brother wasn't at home at that time because he was with his wife on the northwestern shore of Oahu. But about 2 days later, these people came and dismantled the radio and took it home. Then about in the same week, I think, 2 FBI agents came to my house looking for this Walter Oka, who knows so much about the ships in the harbor. I wasn't home, but my brother was. And there was a big family photo on the wall. So the FBI agent asked, "Who is this Walter in that picture?" And there was that little boy, the youngest one on the picture. So the FBI was kind of disappointed. There was a little punk over here that knows so much about Pearl Harbor. And they left. And since it's blackout and what have you, and martial law, things went naturally like anywhere else. You were issued ration cards for gasoline, meat, sugar, butter, and all that kind of stuff. So that's the way we went.